Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the session 4 of the educational sessions. Today we'll be discussing more on AOT, NAMI Kansas, and other resources such as like community resources in your area. So before we get started, if you could please put your name in the chat box, what county you're in, and what your role is within AOT. If you're not part of those AOT pilot sites, you can put your name and just kind of what your role is in the chat box. And give everyone a couple seconds to do that. And as we're doing that, just to introduce ourselves, so I'm Mitsa Moya, the NAMI Kansas AOT project director. Then we have Gina Anderson. She is our AOT specialist in Ellis County. We have Amy Fowler. She is our AOT specialist in Cowley County and Sumner County. And Chelsea Fowler, she is our AOT specialist in Douglas County. So I wanted to include our objectives on here, just give everyone kind of an overview. So in this session, hopefully participants will have a better understanding of AOT, have a better understanding of what the CRO is and what NAMI is. And I know if you're not knowledgeable of the alphabet soup, it's CRO stands for Consumer Owned Organization, and NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And of course, we have just learning the importance of building more community partnerships. And that's really what we're striving for today. So before we get started, kind of more of that information, I wanted to start off with, this is an infographic that you see very commonly used by NAMI National and all our NAMI state organizations. Just that idea of "you're not alone." It's one of our main slogans that we use, and I thought it fit very well with what we are discussing today. So of course, we're going to start off with some of that AOT information, but then we're going to dive deeper into NAMI and CROs and more community resources. And just the concept of "you are not alone" does not only tie into an individual. It's important for an individual to know that they are not alone throughout their recovery journey, but in the greater sense of a community, knowing that you're not alone. So if you're a community mental health center, knowing that you have other supports in your community that you could tap into in case you have something else that you need, maybe a resource that you can't fulfill for an individual. Really knowing your community and who to contact, it seems to be very important in that work that we do. So just always remembering that you are not alone. And now to get into more of that assisted outpatient treatment discourse, and so with AOT, and I do want to preface with saying, if you have logged into our webinar before, or if you might, if when you work in the AOT field, you might eat, breathe, sleep AOT, so you might know some of this information, but the way I wanted to structure it is, so those very commonly asked questions, I have done a lot of presentations and just providing more information regarding the AOT process in the last few years. And so, not trying to give up my job on doing these presentations, but really wanting to inform you on, if you're ever in a position where you have to communicate what AOT is to a stakeholder group, maybe do a presentation on your own, or maybe someone just you're in a situation where you really need to dive into what AOT is, and I know usually when someone asks me on the spot, I think I completely blank out. I don't know what I do half the time, right? But so really focusing in on these questions, I think, is the best way to narrow down what AOT is, and it could help you really communicate that more efficiently to other individuals. So that first more commonly asked question, of course, is what is AOT? So what is assisted outpatient treatment? And in my personal opinion, this has been the easiest way to break it down. Is really, it is a toolbox is a tool in the toolbox for civil courts and the mental health systems to work together to help individuals with severe mental illness who are caught in the cycle of repeated hospitalizations, maybe homelessness, incarceration, and this might be due to their diminished awareness of their need for treatment. AOT really motivates an individual to engage in treatment and ensures treatment providers work diligently to keep them engaged in different treatment. So really narrowing it down to this is what AOT is. So it is a tool. This is how it's going to work. Um, really letting an individual know that this is a practice of delivering outpatient treatment under a court order. Sometimes you really have to emphasize that. And this is for people with SMI or severe mental illness who meet the specific criteria that has been set by the community mental health center. And they have, that prior history of the repeated hospitalizations, incarcerations, homelessness. And this is a tool that is really beneficial for individuals who are at risk for those negative consequences of not receiving treatment. And and then the essential elements of AOT programs. If you go to the TAC website, which is tac.org, this is usually that first step website that I recommend anyone to go to. If you go to TAC and under one of their tabs on what AOT is, it will give you a list of essential elements for AOT programs. And this is something that it might be, you don't have to memorize that, but it's something that it'd be good to keep handy, really have it as one of those breakdown worksheets that you have in case anyone asks questions. And it lists all the essential elements that we probably all really know, which is kind of identifying the individual in the service area where they need the most services in, um, safeguarding the process, really during AOT periods, making sure that their needs are being met, the adjustments are being made if they need to. So that essential elements list, and I could include that also with the resources that I sent out, is always my first step. So really explaining AOT like this as a tool, and then focusing on those essential elements later on in the conversation. So then one of the second question, of course, is who is AOT for? And if you previously mentioned that AOT is really for those individuals with severe mental illness or SMI, then you get the question, right, of like, well, what does that mean? What diagnosis qualifies for that? So focusing on how it's those schizophrenia spectrum disorders, you could break down what those could be. It could be the severe bipolar disorders, and also mentioning that it also could be major depression with psychotic features. Um, and when discussing that SMI, it's also important to discuss that this also includes individuals with dual diagnosis, because we are going to see that a lot with the population within AOT. Then we also have those individuals that have difficulty adhering to treatment. So that means, they have difficulty taking medication, difficulty going to the appointments that they're set to go to. Um, and when discussing this population and just who AOT is for, this is a perfect spot where you want to add some numbers into that. So a lot of people, when they're learning about something new, they want to see that data, they want to see those stats. And again, on that treatment, TAC.org, Treatment Advocacy Center, they have plenty of infographics that are very easily, you could download them, email them out, or you could print them out. And those infographics include those statistics. Something that I always like to highlight that comes from one of the infographics is that about 8.9 million adults in the United States live with an SMI. And out of that 8.9 million, only 42% of individuals receive treatment in a given year. And this could be for various reasons why they decide not to get treatment, or decide why they do want treatment, but really emphasizing on those numbers, and which then would then lead you into kind of that discussion on agnosognosia and what that is, what that means. anosognosia is definitely one of those buzzwords kind of when talking about AOT, because it's something that many people have not heard about before, especially if they're not in the mental health field. And so this is really another area where including some of that data is really important. How many people really are impacted by anosognosia? So about 50 to 60% of people with schizophrenia are impacted by anosognosia, and 50% of people with bipolar disorder are impacted by anosognosia. And again, you could always find statistics that are more prevalent maybe to your area, or that might be newer than what the Treatment Advocacy Center has, but that is some of what they base their research on. Um, and at least 1 in 5 people with severe mental illness are unable to recognize that they have an illness. That is something else that I always really like to highlight. So anosognosia, it really does impact a huge percent of the AOT population, and this is why it's difficult for them to adhere to treatment sometimes. So then we have AOT is also for adults with trauma or suicide screens, people who are homeless or precariously housed, repeated hospitalizations, and repeated law enforcement contacts. So that leads us back into that repeated cycle that we kind of discussed a little bit too. So it ties back into this is who AOT is for, and this is really why we should really focus on that AOT treatment. And then how does AOT work? And I think this might be the most popular question after. So what is it? What is it? What does AOT do? So with how AOT works, so ideally, if you really want to map it out for someone, especially if they've never heard about AOT before, maybe they haven't done some of that research. Ideally, the process that is on the screen is how it would you would see it on paper. So first off, that petition is filled. You have a hearing is held in that civil court. Due process rights are protected. There's clear and convincing evidence that the standard is met, so that standard to be an AOT participant. Then the AOT order is ordered. After AOT is ordered, you have you're providing those needed treatment and services for the individual, whatever that it is that they need. So that includes case management, peer support, therapy, medication. So it's really assessing what they need. And then we are monitoring their adherence to the treatment. So making sure that they're going to these appointments, making sure that what is ordered of them through the court docket, that they're kind of meeting those needs. And then we're making sure that participants are engaging in treatment. And this looks different for every AOT program, depending on what your policy and procedures are locally, like in-house. So engaging to treatment, sometimes these check-ins include, so that monthly court docket that you have every month, the judge more than likely will make sure that they are adhering to treatment. So they make sure with the treatment team, they have the report, but then they also ask the AOT participant during court docket, like, are you going to this? If they're not, like, so why aren't you not going to your appointments? What is it that we could do to help you? So that making sure the participant is engaging in the treatment really does vary depending on the program itself. And of course, after you X amount of months that the person has been in this AOT program, if they have met everything they needed to meet, then order is dismissed and not continued. Or if they haven't been meeting those needs, then you have that continuation and the person stays on the program for as long as they need until they're able to graduate. So when breaking down how AOT works, it's important to really highlight that AOT, the stakeholders are the heart of the program. So with those stakeholders, you really involve, it's the court. So, that judge, we have the attorneys that are involved in the process. We have the mental health services. So that includes a therapist, case manager, AOT liaison, whoever it might be that is on board and working with the AOT participant. This is who you include in your stakeholders. And it's important to kind of bring in some of that community involvement and buy-in. So when you're really you're starting off an AOT program, sometimes what it takes is really that stakeholder buy-in before you're able to officially start your program, go through all those details. And so highlighting on this is the heart of the program, is making sure that all these stakeholders are in place. So that also includes law enforcement, like making sure everyone's on the same page. We all know what is happening, and this is how we're going to make our AOT program work. Sometimes it's important to highlight on what the treatment looks like, especially if you are discussing AOT with a person that maybe doesn't know anything about the clinical field, or that legal side of the field. Letting them know that this treatment, that wraparound treatment that we often talk about, it includes case management, therapy, peer support, medication appointments. This might also include services for co-occurring diagnosis. So that could be some sort of substance use treatment or substance use help. And then we also have employment and housing services that an individual could also receive, depending on what is offered in the community mental health center. For everyone, it's going to be different. Every single center offers something different. Their staff could be a different label, but really emphasizing that it's a full-on team that's working together to make sure this AOT participant is getting the help that they need. And then after an order is dismissed, some people might ask, well, what's the average for that? So on average, you see an AOT participant in the program for a minimum of 6 months, up to a year, and it could be more. There are some individuals that have been an AOT for longer than that because it works and they like that stability, they like the structure of the program, so they decide to continue on. So that is really where the success of the length of the program varies depending on the individual. And also another thing to highlight is that an AOT is, we want to see a person for a minimum of 6 months, because it usually takes medications about 4 to 6 months to really start working if they're taking or adhering to the medication regimen that they should be. And it also takes a few months, more than 4 months for someone to really stabilize their lives. Maybe they're trying to find employment, maybe they're trying to find housing. So it's not something that's going to happen within 3 court dockets. Most of the time it's going to be more. And then another question that we get very often is the consequences of non-adherence. And this is something that, depending on the public, you really don't discuss, because some individuals don't really ask about the consequences. Some group of people really do. So when talking about consequences, really highlighting that it's not seen as a complete negative thing. So when you're not adhering to an AOT, the requirements of the AOT program, the judge might change the frequency of your court docket check-ins. So you might be a person that isn't really adhering to treatment, so the judge decides that they want to see you every month, or they might want to see you more than just once a month. And for some individuals, when they're doing really well in a program, then you kind of push back some of those court check-ins. So the frequency of court check-ins depends on how the person is adhering to the treatment. Then we have the time in the program is extended. So that could be that maybe they hit the 6-month mark when they thought they would be going to be dismissed, but they haven't been adhering to treatment. So you're continuing on, you're pushing back that deadline. Transportation. So your transportation to an evaluation, and this could be in the community mental health center, it could be somewhere else depending on how your program runs. So really getting them reevaluated, what is going on, what services do we need to be providing more of, and then if needed, really highlighting that if a person isn't adhering to treatment and you have done everything that you typically do for an AOT participant, and that is still not working, that is when the treatment team and the judge start to consider rehospitalization. And if the person meets the criteria to be rehospitalized. And it's really important to highlight with the consequences that AOT is not a negative thing. We don't want to punish individuals for not adhering to their treatment, but we do want to make sure that they are getting better and they are getting the help that they need and deserve. So we are trying all these things, and if it doesn't work, that's when we hospitalize. So really, keeping those consequences more to the treatment team and the judge, whatever they seem would better fit the person. After talking about AOT, what it is, who it helps, and what the consequences are, then it really comes down to like how is all this working if you don't have any actual teeth to do some of the things that you're stating that need to be done. So that is when we bring in the black robe effect, and this could be something that the first time someone is hearing about it. So the black robe effect, it motivates an adult with a mental illness who struggles with voluntary treatment with adherence to engage fully with their treatment plan. And it focuses the attention of treatment providers on the need to work diligently to keep the person engaged in effective treatment. So that black robe effect, as explained more easily, is truly that authority figure, so the judge, being around the table, having a conversation with the treatment team, with the AOT provider, and bringing everyone together, kind of making sure we're on the same page, and being able to have that conversation with the AOT participant. That's the most important part. So really, when highlighting, this is kind of like the magical wild card of AOT for some individuals, and in some cases, how the judge's role is kind of one of the main keys with AOT. Everything is very vital, very important, but your judge is that crucial aspect, because they are that authority figure that maybe in the past, depending on the size of your county, your AOT participant has crossed paths with the judge, and it hasn't been a good experience. They have felt maybe discriminated towards because of their mental illness, maybe whatever they did in the past. So with that black robe effect, is really changing those conversations, letting the AOT participant know that it is not a bad thing to be around this table, to have these conversations with the judge, and explaining that AOT docket hearings are not your traditional hearings. Most places are not. So you're not walking into this courtroom with the judge in his black robe on their desk in front of everybody. It is really something that's a little bit more less formal. It is roundtable. It is a discussion. And something I really do recommend for every community mental health center is to, if your judge is willing to give some sort of testimony, something that you, and by testimony, I mean asking your judge and maybe, jotting it down, is how they feel, or do they believe in this black robe effect, what they have seen, the effects, the positive effects it has made towards an AOT individual or to someone in general, and really keeping that in your back pocket. So whenever you have any stakeholders meetings, or you have any other presentation in the community to let your community know what AOT is like, or again, you're having that conversation with someone, maybe networking, and they ask you, really, what is the black robe effect? What is AOT? So having that testimony in your back pocket, being able to pull it out, like, hey, this is what the judge has said. This is how he has said that the black robe effect has helped us and our AOT program in the long run. That is always really vital information, because the opinion of a judge is always very well respected. And the community, when they hear that their judge is all in favor of this, they're supporting what the movement is, it really does change some of those conversations into a more positive manner. So definitely something to keep in mind, really just having that conversation with the judge whenever they have time, and you're able to maybe get them to answer a couple questions, letting them know that you are keeping that as a record, for as like a testimony. So in case anyone has any questions, or there's any negative talk towards AOT, you have that to fall back on. Like, this is what the judge has said. He is in agreement. This is why it works. And if one thing to really take away from this, or if you want to narrow down a presentation to maybe an elevator speech, because it happens sometimes. Maybe you're in an event or you're somewhere and you really need to keep AOT simple to the point so it actually sticks. You don't have time to present this information that we've been talking about. It's really AOT stops the revolving door of treat, street, and repeat. It's something that is super simple to remember, and it really stops a person and makes them think. And an image that I always like to describe to someone is those revolving doors that you see in some buildings. And if an individual doesn't really know when to come out of it, you're going to be continuously going around it until it stops. So really putting that imagery in a person's head and bringing this up, it really stops that revolving door of treat, street, and repeat. And to add a little bit more into that is you're doing this by having this wraparound team that is really focusing on the AOT individual, focusing on their needs, focusing on things they could change to better and help them in their recovery journey. And you are also doing this with the help of that judge. So that judge is providing kind of that black robe effect, so providing some of that authority figure, and they're there to also provide that support, to also have those conversations, provide that motivation to an individual. So this is truly that slogan that I recommend using, and it's straight to the point, and it's very easy to remember whenever discussing AOT. So moving along from AOT and really how to discuss more of the information. And I want to touch back on that "you're not alone" slogan that we previously mentioned. So it's that idea of building neighborhoods. So building community, building partnerships. You could describe it differently depending on how you want to describe it, but it's that idea of that we're working together in your communities to build those partnerships with other resources. And this makes the line of communication easier when helping individuals. So you have an AOT participant, and maybe you don't have someone on staff that could help you with housing, or that could help you with employment, or that could help you with some food. Your AOT participants needs to go to a food pantry or whatever it might be. It's very important to have that neighborhood already built, so you're able to, who to contact to, like, hey, I have this person, this is the help that they need, and can you help me? Can I send them over? Can you come to our building at this time? So really being able to have those connections when working, and it's not just with AOT, I think it's in general, being able to provide those partnerships and build those neighborhoods in our community. So we're more efficiently providing services to our AOT participants, to our clients as a whole. So that idea, and this infographic might be difficult to see on screen. I will be also sending this out with my resources, but with NAMI published this in 2023, so NAMI National, and it's that ripple effect of mental illness. So it's that idea of having a mental illness can make it challenging to live your everyday life and maintain recovery. So this is beyond the individual. These challenges ripple out through our families, our communities, and our world. So you have someone that's here in your base, that's your person, and what they're going through is really going out towards your family, towards your community, towards that bigger, like, world aspect. So when we're helping individuals, and this could be AOT participant, a client in general, if their baseline needs aren't met, they're maybe in crisis, they need something else that they need to handle, that starts causing a ripple into their families. So then you have and in with NAMI, we use the term family very loosely. So family is not just that of a biological relative. This also includes maybe your neighbors, your friends, your coworkers, anyone that you consider to be part of your support system is who in NAMI we refer to as family. So when a person their baseline needs are not being met, they're starting to cause those ripples, then we see that into their family, their support system. So now the family is trying to figure out, well, how do I get this person to appointments? Does my loved one need to be hospitalized? What can I do as a family member to make sure my person's needs are being met? So of course we have that support system dynamic, that family dynamic that starts to ripple too. And keeping in mind that these support system, the family member, they're also people themselves. So you're causing that ripple into that family aspect of things, but it's also on a more individualized level too, because they also might be in a crisis. And then that's when you get into causing the ripples into your community, and that's often when we see um, homelessness in some capacity, depending on your community. So it could be a person that hasn't received the treatment that they need and they deserve. So then they might be unhoused. They might not be employed. They might be going through some other struggles in the community. And this oftentimes also includes that idea of that repeated hospitalization, incarceration. So they might have maybe some public disturbance incidents as well, where they are struggling, they're in crisis, and now they might be causing more ripples into their community because of how they might be acting. So it's always important to picture that bigger ripples that are going on when an individual is not at that baseline when they are struggling, and knowing that as a AOT program, as a treatment provider, your focus is to help that person that is in crisis, that person that needs the services, but then thinking further into the dynamic. So if you know that this person is in crisis, maybe they just came out of the state hospital, knowing that their support system, so their family member, it could be a spouse, whoever it is, their support system is also experiencing part of that crisis. And knowing that your job is to help the person in the crisis, you're helping the AOT participant with their services, but now you might have this family member, they're asking a lot of questions. You really don't know how to help them because they're not your direct client. This is where those neighborhoods, building that neighborhood, those partnerships really come into play. So you have that family member that needs some sort of assistance, and you're able to pull out your resource list, or you know who to contact. You know that you could contact your local NAMI, or you could contact some other organization in your community to help the family member, to help the spouse with whatever they're struggling with. And that will overall help that entire dynamic. The family member, that support system will be more at that baseline, maybe they'll be okay, and they're able to provide that support that their AOT individual needs. So it's thinking in that bigger perspective, and really making sure that needs are being met by multiple people. And it doesn't mean that it's just by us, it could be by someone else too. So the first organization that I really want to dive into is NAMI. So what is NAMI? Again, part of that alphabet soup, as I like to call it, all those acronyms, all that jargon that we typically hear. So NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization dedicated to building better lives for millions of Americans affected by mental illness. So this includes the person with the mental illness, their support system, anyone in their community that needs the help. And at NAMI Kansas, our mission is to provide education, to provide support, to provide leadership and advocacy for individuals that are being impacted by mental illness in their life. Part of our goals are um, they tie that mission back in. So we are advocating for different instances in our community. That could be at the community level, it could be at the state level. This past earlier this year, NAMI Kansas, we rallied together to help with House Bill 2353. We got some of our NAMI Kansas advocates to send in letters of support, testimonies, anything needed to help House Bill 23 and see how important it was. So we do some of the advocating in our local level, but also our state level. We are educating the public about mental illness, and this includes any educational presentation that we might be doing, or our different groups that we offer. We're working to kind of eliminate that stigma. So one of NAMI National's bigger platform right now is being stigma free and taking a stigma free pledge, and just really advocating to reduce the stigma in some of our communities that are very still impacted by stigma, and also advocating for further funding for the research, whatever it might be, to help with mental illness in that community. And the vision at NAMI Kansas is really to envision a person's future where their mental health needs are being met, they are accepted and they're cared for, they're part of the community, and we are able to fulfill everyone's needs when it comes to a peer needing more services or a family member needing more services, or maybe the community just asking for a little bit more. So how can NAMI Kansas help and be part of that neighborhood dynamic? Because with NAMI Kansas, I like to picture us sometimes as that bridge. So if you're not sure of who to contact really when you're starting to build out your neighborhoods in your community, I always recommend contacting the local NAMI affiliate, or in this case with our AOT programs, you contact myself or you contact one of the AOT specialists, and we will try our best to then create that connection between what you need and that other organization. So with that education aspect, we have our different NAMI signature programs, and I try my best to send out those virtual resources that we might offer locally. I always recommend reaching out to your local affiliate or one of the NAMI AOT specialists to see if anything is offered local in person. But if not, we also always have those virtual classes being offered depending on the time of the year. Currently, the classes that are ongoing right now will end at probably the beginning of November, and then there's a break because of the holidays, and virtual classes restart in January. So on that education side, those NAMI signature programs, the one I always like to highlight is NAMI Family to Family, which is an 8-week educational programs for, again, that family. So the family, friend, spouse, caregiver of people with a mental illness. Then we have NAMI Peer to Peer, which is an 8-week educational session for adults with a mental illness. Very same structure, but on that it is offered for the person with a mental illness. These programs are facilitated by 2 trained facilitators. On the family side, it's 2 family members. On the peer side, it's 2 peers that are in recovery of their mental illness, and they are able to offer that perspective and that personal experience when facilitating these classes. And of course, we have other programs like NAMI Basics, that is a 6-week session for parents with a minor child with mental illness. We have NAMI Homefront, which is a 6-week program for family, friends, and significant others of military service members and veterans. So in case you ever run across someone that has that is part of that military dynamic or is a veteran, NAMI Homefront is a very good resource for them to help. They really highlight on PTSD and other type of mental illnesses that might arise because of their service, and it's always a very informational class. On that support aspect, we have support groups. We offer NAMI Connection, which is that it is support group for people with mental illness. The facilitators are 2 people in their mental health recovery, and their expertise is able to help them lead that group. And then we have a NAMI Family Support Group, which is again led by 2 family members, and it's a safe, confidential space where someone could go in and seek more support. So and we do offer these in some places we do have them in person, and others we do offer them virtually, just to make sure that we're filling in those gaps. Advocacy, we have the NAMI Kansas Advocacy Committee. They work year round to make sure that that they have all any mental health legislative anything that you could think of. They have it on their list. They're making sure that they are they're writing in their testimonies, they're writing in their support, they're going to Mental Health Advocacy Day, whatever is needed to help to continue to advocate towards a stigma-free place, that is what they're doing. And at the local level, your local NAMI affiliate might be going to community meetings to make sure that they are also filling in some of those gaps or advocating for what needs to be spoken out about. And when we're leading, so in locally and statewide, we are leading many conversations in regards to mental illness. One newer thing that NAMI Kansas has been doing here recently more often is a standing in the gap presentation. And that standing in the gap presentation is like a mental health summit, 6 free CAUs are offered, and most of the times you also get a free lunch. But with the NAMI standing in the gap, it's typically 10 to 5, and it is a presentation really highlighting on people's experience with mental illness, highlighting on the resources that you have in your community, but also tying in that faith-based perspective, which might seem a little odd sometimes when you're mixing in faith-based perspective and mental illness and our work that we do, but it ties in some of those other community leaders and other community resources like the Ministerial Alliance, Catholic Charities, whatnot, that actually do a lot to provide services for the mental health community and for the community in general. So those standing in the gap presentations, they're held throughout the state. Usually, if you're interested in more information, all you have to do is contact our state office, and we are able to then get a meeting, start getting the planning going, and to be able to host this in your community. So NAMI Kansas is doing a lot in our communities to make sure we're filling in those gaps, we're leading those conversations. And this information, so a list of support groups, I will be sending it out in case anyone is interested. It's always good to have those on hand, as previously when we were discussing those ripple effects, especially with the family members. So you're helping out your AOT participant, and you know for a fact their family is also involved, their family also needs help. Definitely contact an AOT specialist, contact me, whoever it might be, so we are able to connect that support system, those family members, to some NAMI resources, so they're able to fill some of those needs or able to get some of that information that they might be needing. So now I will switch it over to Gina, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about consumer-run organizations.
Excuse me, I just took a bite. Okay, CROs are peer recovery organizations that are founded and operated by individuals that self-identify as people who have experienced mental illness, substance abuse, or co-occurring disorders. The CROs seek to provide a safe and healing place, trauma-free, which enhances wellness and promotes resiliency. And through mental health, through mutual support, CROs share recovery stories and strategies to help each other overcome challenges to living a full and meaningful life in recovery. And the one thing I will say, ITSA will be sending in the resources, you'll see where the CROs are in the state of Kansas. And I'm in Hayes, and we have a CRO. I'm the director. And we work with NAMI, and NAMI works with us really well. And the mental health center, we work together. If during the AOT program, if the consumer receiving this resources is or the services is in a community where there is a CRO, that just adds a little extra support, because the CROs are all run, and the members are all self-identified as people who have experienced mental health in their past at some point. One of the things that we find is that by having a CROs, we are open 6 days a week. Not all CRs are open 6 days a week. Topeka is open 3 days a week. You just have to find out what your organization or your town has. Um, we also have a good relationship with the ACT team, and forgive me, I'm not going to remember what that is. Assisted community treatment
I
or
think
team
so.
or
Or
something.
assertive community treatment, something like
Assertive,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And by being able, as a AOT specialist, I'm able to sit in court and I'm able to say to them, okay, I'm a peer. So you can talk to me about anything. It's, I'll help you get what you need. Um, and they see that I am in recovery. They see that what is happening. And it gives them a little bit of hope that maybe they can get in recovery as well. Um, I know that our team is, one of the best in my opinion. Of course, I'm a little prejudiced there, but it is, we work together so well. And if the judge questions something, when I bring stuff to the table, I can say, well, this consumer came out to the CRO 3 times this month. And that shows the judge that they are making the effort to do some of their own recovery, taking place in their recovery. And if not, that's okay. It just gives them another outlet to work. Um, because at the CROs we educate, we play games, we have music going, we have groups, but they're not um super formal. Um, we talk about, topics that you don't talk about all the time, some of the taboo topics. And it's where people can get down and really, have a chance of hearing their story. That's one of the things that is very good about the CROs is if you come long enough, you're going to hear their story. Well, that's the same thing that goes on with AA or NA. You attend the meeting long enough, you'll hear your story. And, it may not be 100% exact, but you start to realize that you're not alone. And we use that a lot. You're not alone. That is one of our big ones. Um, so, it's just an added resource that goes together. NAMI and the CROs. I mean, we have different objectives, but the goal is the same, and that's recovery and becoming able to be self-sufficient, to be an active member of your community, to have, the thing of less um, um, treat state hospital stays, and hopefully less um, criminal stays. The one thing that we are very proud of is that we've done well here in Ellis County, and it's such a blessing when you have a group of people that are on the same page and see the need. And then see, we've been doing it for 3 years, so we're seeing people graduate, we're seeing people, not needing our services as much, that kind of thing. And that's just really exciting um for us, and it's quite interesting to watch as people come in to the AOT program. Sometimes family members bring them, and a lot of times the family is used to speaking for the consumer. And so our judge doesn't like that too well. So if he gets somebody whose family member won't be quiet and let the consumer answer, he'll have me take the family member out and talk about the family programs that NAMI has and understand the fact that the consumer needs to be able to answer those questions, needs to be able to take a vital part. What is really humorous at times is we get the consumer standing on their own, and then the family member loses control, and they're not sure they like that. But you know, we tell them, and you know, you came in here and you wanted this help, and now that we've got it, and they're starting to stand on your feet, you're saying no. And it takes them back a little bit, because the family members, especially the bio family members, have lived with this disease all their life, and they've watched their loved ones struggle. So um being able to offer um some of that freedom gives them a chance to better their relationships. And as much as we chuckle on that one, the other side is there's many family members that are just so darn grateful that you know we have stepped in and helped their loved one become a active member in their society to whatever degree they are willing and able, because it's not one size fits all. Each individual that we see, it's not we stamp them in and do the same thing for each person, because that's not what they need. um so if you ever need to talk to anybody, or want me to talk, I have a platform. um just let us know, because I really believe that together we can make a difference. Oh, you didn't turn that quick enough.
I didn't.
Oh, okay, there's the map of the CROs in the state, and the stars are CROs. The stars with a circle are the resource recovery specialists. And that means that, like for me, I go to Larned. I have a support group in Barton County. We are working on getting a support group in the Meade area. Um, what's the other one I'm looking? Oh, Finney County, might be Finney County, but you can see where these go. And the blue ones are the support groups. They're not quite a CRO yet, but they do have a support group that meets regularly, and regularly can be once a week, um, twice a week, whatever that support group can do at that moment. And we're all about, we want to get this built back up again, because we see where working together, it makes the consumer much more successful.
So do you know what, if someone is interested in starting a CRO in their area, what would be, how would they go about
Well,
that?
okay, you contact okay, me, I'm number 2. I'm a regional resource 1. Um Manhattan is region 2, and Kansas City is region 5. And so you would contact one of us, and then we would start the process of starting a support group. Then we have to take you through the process of getting a 501c3, and whether you've got people that are willing to commit to the, because it takes a commitment to create a CRO in your area. But you know support groups are just as good. We can make them work. And you may start out as a support group and go for a long time, or you may start out as a support group, and like number 11, um Recovery Harbor is already working on their 501c3. They've gotten that, so they're looking to getting a recovery sorry, a CRO started, going from a support group to a CRO, which means they would be able to have more hours, offer more services. So, we're all about whatever works in your community, because Kansas is unique in the fact that we have a lot of rural areas. And so I was doing a um, support group up in Phillips County until everybody moved. Um, so it works for a while. And but yeah, um, Itzel's going to be giving the information, and it will have all of our contact information on it. So even if you don't know the person in your area, you can contact me and I can get you started. We're very flexible.
Yeah, thank you, Gina. CRO, we really, the example, of course, I always like to use is the one Gina runs there in Hayes, and they are a great resource for the community. And when we're talking about community building, they are truly one of the key players of that. Like, you definitely want to contact your CRO, uh, figure out, I guess, if your area has one. As you can see in this map, I will be emailing this out, and sometimes in some more places, because I've heard this conversation before, there are some individuals that you have those peers in recovery that want to start up a CRO, or they want to be more involved in the community. And definitely, as Gina kind of explained, reaching out, starting that support group, seeing if they could build on top of that is definitely the way to go, because they are able to offer a lot of really good resources in the area. And more importantly, they are a really good safe space for individuals with mental illness.
Right. And I would mention too that, when I got with AOT, with NAMI, with AOT, the county attorney, the judge, and the defense attorney had never heard of our CRO. And it's like, I've been doing this since 2011. Our CRO has been open since 96. And it's like, and it just shows the progression of breaking stigma. When the CROs were first um, developed, they were called a drop-in center, because basically you had coffee, a TV, and a smoking area, and and you talked with friends, but it was always when the mental health center was not open. And from that, then we moved farther into it, where we now work with the community. And um and then it depends on where your leader is, because I'm not afraid to say, hey, I got a mental illness, that's no biggie. um because I've worked through so many different things. That doesn't mean I don't have struggles. It means that I have lived experience and I can help with lived experience. So
Yeah, thank you. And that,
that helps.
yeah, I think that that's the more important part to highlight, that lived experience. And especially in the areas or the community mental health centers that don't have a peer support specialist on staff, because I know some places don't have one just yet. Really trying to figure out, or those peer support services that are in your area. So if you have a CRO, definitely contacting the CRO. If you have a NAMI in your area, and I should have included the NAMI map on here, but I didn't. I'm sorry. I will definitely send it out in the resources. But really reaching out to those places that have or do have some sort of peer support that is offered is a good alternative. So if you don't have a peer support member, a specialist on staff, finding some organization in your community that definitely offers some of that peer support is good, because as what we have seen, receiving that help from a peer support specialist is important, because the peer support specialist is an expert in their own story. They're an expert in recovery. And when working with the AOT participant, or just a person in general in their mental illness recovery journey, being able to have that communication, or being able to see what it's like to be a person in recovery, a person that has maybe gone through a bunch of loops, a bunch of issues, and now they're on the other side of that, is a really good thing to keep them motivated, keep them working towards that, their own story, their own successes. So I will be sending out. So I have this map that I will be sending out, but I also have the information for the CROs and support groups that are listed. So I'll send that out as part of my resource list, and I will also send out the list for the NAMI Kansas affiliates, and that map as well. I always like to visualize things, so having those maps always helps with trying to localize some of these aspects. So let me go forward. So two of the more important resources that we highlighted because we're actively involved with them are NAMI, your local NAMI affiliate, and your local CRO. But then we have other community resources that we really need to just kind of think into. As Gina said, some communities don't even know, but if they have a CRO, what their CRO is, that they even have one. NAMI, a common story that we hear is that NAMI used to be the best kept secret in their area, and we don't want that to be a secret. We don't want our consumer run organizations to be a secret, or NAMI affiliates to be a secret, or other community or other in general community resources. It's not it's always good to build those foundations of partnerships to be able to help each other out. So some of the other community resources that you might have in your area that might help in different aspects. So Harvest America Corporation, I know there is, like, for example, Fort County has one, Ellis County has one. They're not as spread out throughout the state as some other more generalized resources are. But if you do have a Harvest America in your area, their services include helping individuals with that job search. So that includes helping them fill out job applications, sometimes even helping them with transportation to get to the interview, helping them with clothes, helping them with interview prep. So they're really focused on that job search, and that is in general for anyone in the public that wants to go in and receive their services. So if you're in an area that does have a Harvest America and you maybe don't have an employment specialist at your community mental health center, definitely reaching out to Harvest America if you do have one in your area. They're a great partner to have and to help with that employment search. In most of our areas, we do have a United Way, and most of us hopefully are working with United Way, but United Way really helps fill some of those gaps, and that includes in general, not with mental illness, but with individuals in our community that need more help with accessing uh, to like help pay their bills or to help with other accessing other community resources. So United Way is really kind of like that hub. They usually your United Way in your area will usually have like an ongoing list of resources in your area, resources that can help with like food pantry needs, transportation needs, bill payment needs, whatever it could be. United Way more than likely has that information already. So if you're in your local area, maybe you don't have an established NAMI affiliate, or maybe you don't know of who else to contact, definitely finding your United Way and building a really good partnership with them is the way to go. United Way also does a lot of fundraising in the area. They depending on the area, they might be able to help with some financial needs of an AOT participant or client in general. So definitely reaching out to United Way. They work on filling out those gaps, and they do a lot for the community. So it's their vital partnership to have. Something else that some of our communities have are Catholic charities. Catholic charities in a similar way offer a lot of help. That could be financial help, that in some places they actually have like mental health professionals on staff, case managers, whatever it might be, depending on the size. But Catholic Charities definitely is one of those partners that, similar to United Way, they will help you to the best of their ability, but if they cannot, they will help you find those resources that you need. So, and with that tying into the Ministerial Alliance, so throughout the journey of the NAMI Kansas Standing in the Gap presentations, we have developed a relationship with the Ministerial Alliances throughout the state. And these individuals are able to help sometimes with some of those financial needs. The Ministerial Alliance is able to help you find those resources that you might need, especially if you have someone that might need help with rent, need help with a bill, might need help buying a new phone or putting minutes in their phone. So definitely, Catholic Charities, Ministerial Alliance, there's some of those more faith-based organizations that do offer a lot of help in the community, depending on the size of your community. What we have found is in our more rural areas, the Ministerial Alliances are doing a lot to stand in those gaps. So that means they are offering, yes, they are offering some of that financial help, but they're also helping in other ways that their community might need. So definitely building a relationship with them. And then building a relationship with the Oxford houses in your area, that association, and in a lot of our cases, what we have seen is that some AOT participants, when they're, especially if they have that SUD, or they're at co-occurring diagnosis, they really strive or they flourish in some of these more structured Oxford House settings. And it's, if you have an Oxford House in your area, which we typically do in most of our areas, definitely reaching out, especially if I have an AOT participant that you feel is ready to maybe live more independently, or maybe they're struggling with housing. Having a relationship with the Oxford houses in your area is really amazing. And also they help out, their network is great. And if you have someone that is moving away or that has to move for some reason, most of the time they will also help you with that, connecting those pieces, being able to help make that moving a more smooth transition. And also the NA and AA groups in the area. So just knowing when they are having a running list of when their groups are offered, when their resources are offered, is definitely always a good thing to keep on handy. Because of course we have our wraparound services that we already are offering our AOT participants, our clients in general, and it's never a bad thing to have some more of those extra resources. So keeping those running lists, just seeing who kind of helps run those and building up a relationship with that, which also ties into any substance use treatment agency. So if you have anything in your local area that focuses just on that substance use treatment, having that connection really helps, because then you're able to share some resources, and maybe bounce back ideas if needed. Something that not too many of our local areas have is like a suicide prevention organization or coalition, whatever it might be. They do a lot more of like local tabling, local events where they just strive for more awareness in your community. And it's always a good relationship to have, because they will help with that stigma portion of everything. So as we're doing all these things, and as we're fighting stigma, definitely becoming partners or just building those relationships with suicide prevention organizations is always good, because they most of the times they have, they'll have their social media, or they have other ways to reach out into the community, and they're able to then help with that part of care. And then, of course, we have our law enforcement agencies, sheriff's departments, whatever it might be. Always really important to make sure they're in the loop too. Make sure you have a good standing relationship with them to help with communication, any other need that you might have. A good standing relationship always makes that easier. Then we have transportation services, and this looks different in every area depending on the size. Some areas you do have that public transit that might include buses. So maybe being able to develop a relationship into which, how the routes run, maybe sometimes they donate um some free passes or discounted passes. And sometimes if you don't have that public transportation in your community, then making relationships with if any potential local taxis or anyone else that provides transportation, building that connection, knowing how to contact them, maybe even building that connection to where they offer a free or discounted ride. That's also a really important thing to have in your back pocket. So any transportation services, and then the area agency on aging. So they provide resources for that aging population, which we sometimes run into depending on the AOT participant. So really figuring out what your local resources are and just outreaching and being able to start building those connections and building those partnerships is really important. Not just with AOT participants, but in general in the mental health community, in your community in general, you want to have a well-rounded network in your area. So whenever you need some help, you know who to contact, who to go to. And I know in most of our communities, we might have something different. We might not have all these options. We might have more than this, depending on the size. But if there's anything that else that comes to mind that we could add to this list, please put it in the chat box. I always like to keep a running list of ideas of different resources that we could include. So if you have any ideas, drop it in that chat box because I think definitely expanding on this list helps. I know personally sometimes I don't even think about who to contact until I see this running list of like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That could be someone we could reach out to. Yeah, food banks, that's always good. Knowing who the food banks, where they are, who runs them, how to contact them. Um, if you don't have a food bank specifically in your community, making connections with, for example, United Way. Oftentimes, United Way, Catholic Charities. I guess one that I forgot is the Salvation Army. They tend to do a lot of stuff in our communities too. Those organizations typically know who to contact. Like sometimes churches have a food pantry that they actually have open to the community, but not many people know about this too. So that is really why making connection with the churches, making connections with any other of these resources is good because then you keep in mind some of those food pantry needs or other needs. Some places also keep a running closet per se. So they might have a closet where they let people borrow clothes to go to job interviews, or they have a free closet where people come in and just find clothes as they need them. So definitely learning who those organizations are, keeping those in your back pocket, building those connections, and kind of like going back to that imagery, building your neighborhoods and knowing that you don't have to be alone. Um, we don't have to reinvent that wheel. So if you're in your community mental health center, you know you need a resource, you don't have it yet, reaching out into your community and finding out if someone in your community offers that is the best way to go. Because sometimes we might not even know it, and some of these agencies might already have a full running food pantry, free closet, whatever it might be that we might need. I know we run into like rental assistance issues often, transportation issues, phone issues, and some of these resources might help with that. Also, I will include this in the resources that I send out, but NAMI Kansas also has our NAMI Kansas helpline. So it's basically just a resource line or resource person on the other line has a database where we try to keep track of the resources in throughout the state, and we're able to help you contact who it might be in your area that you might need. And with that resource line, because again, one person is looking into all throughout the state, we might not have everything that is specific to a community, but we try our best to find those resources in the community. So if you don't know where to start, that resource line is always a good way too. They also have an email. I'll make sure to include that too. And of course, 988, you'd be surprised with how many individuals in some of our communities, and not just rural communities, because we've also seen this in more of our more urban communities as well. Some people still don't know what 988 is. So really helping push that out, helping with some of those maybe more public knowledge events that you might have in your area. So some of the suicide prevention coalitions or organizations throughout the state, they work really hard to push out that 988 number and table at local events in their communities. So definitely helping out with some of those efforts, just knowing and it doesn't have to be volunteering your time. It could be helping out in other ways, but just figuring out ways to build that neighborhood, build those connections, and go from there. Because then we strive for better services in our agencies, but as well as just better connections in our neighborhood that overall just help our AO2 participants, their family, and anyone else in that community, kind of helping that ripple effect, just sending it right back, helping stabilize everything. But before we move on to kind of like that CEU portion of everything, does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself and speak. You can drop it in the chat box, or you could email me with your question too. I'm always more than happy to help provide any information. And I will try my best to send out just all these resources in one email so you could search it up and you know how to find anything. So in case anyone needs any of that CEU information, we will now drop the evaluation link in the chat box. And this evaluation link, it will probably take maybe a minute to fill out if you do need it. Fill out the evaluation, and here in a minute we will drop the link for the CEU certificate. And that evaluation is just for our records. They don't really get shared. It's just so we can keep track of any time we offer a CEU. And for that CEU link, it will take you back to that NAMI Kansas website. That password is AOT CEU in all capital. After you fill out that form, you will receive your it should come in within seconds to a minute in your email inbox. But if you do happen to fill out this information and you don't receive an email with your certificate, just let me know. We all know technology fails from time to time. So if it doesn't come by after we're over here or at some point today, let me know and I could manually provide that too. So as everyone is working on that, I just wanted to just to give thanks to everybody. Thank you for logging in today. Hopefully this was some of that information that you were looking for. I will be sending out the emails with the resources probably at some point earlier next week. But this is my direct line number and my email, just in case you have any questions before then. You could always contact me. I'm always happy to help with anything. AOT related, NAMI related, or with community resources in general. And let me